My mom told me for years to stop whining and go cry to my father. So one day I did, and it cost her everything. Growing up, I thought my life was normal until I realized I was raising my mother, not the other way around. She called herself the victim, but she was living off child support while I worked 2 jobs just to survive. I didn't really understand what divorce meant at the time. All I knew was that my dad didn't live with us anymore, and suddenly my mom was angry all the time, not just normal angry. Like bitter, resentful, everything is someone else's fault kind of angry. The moment I stopped letting her guilt trip me and turned to the one person she always blamed, my dad, everything changed. My mom turned us into her emotional crutches, her personal assistants, and unpaid maids. She kept her head down, did what she had to, and rarely talked back. It was like she needed us to fail so she could feel better about her own life. And anytime we showed signs of independence, she would cut us down. It wasn't just the yelling or the beatings, it was the way we never felt safe, never felt good enough, and always carried this invisible weight that somehow we were responsible for her misery. "Don't think you're better than me," she'd hiss. "You wouldn't survive a day without me." I was the one who questioned things, who asked why. That made me the target more often. I think she saw me as a threat to the fantasy she was trying to sell, that she was the struggling, heroic single mom, and we were just these selfish brats who didn't appreciate her sacrifices. We existed to make her life easier, and she made sure we knew that. We were kids forced to act like adults, while our mother acted like a teenager. She had the power, and she used it not to protect us, but to keep us small, and that imbalance? It shaped every part of who I became until I decided enough was enough. My mom, well, let's just say she could have written the handbook on narcissistic parenting. Every time we complained about something, a growling stomach in the morning, needing help with homework, asking for new shoes, we got hit with the same line: "It's your father's fault." School, homework, house chores, cooking dinner, we did it all. Asking mom for help wasn't just pointless, it was dangerous. If we did, she'd explode screaming, sometimes hitting, always reminding us how ungrateful and worthless we were. Go cry to him. This is the story of how I quietly, legally destroyed her comfortable life by simply doing what she always told me to do: complain to my father. But instead, she weaponized our dad's absence as an excuse for everything that went wrong. No food in the fridge, his fault. No money for field trips or school supplies, blame him. And slowly, without even realizing it, my sister and I stopped asking questions. We stopped expecting anything. That's when the real damage started. My story starts way back when I was just a kid no older than 6 when my parents' marriage officially fell apart. She got full custody of me and my older sister, and what should have been a stable home quickly turned into a battlefield of guilt trips and gaslighting. At first, we really believed her. I mean, she was our mom. She was supposed to protect us, love us. By the time I was 8 and my sister 10, we were trained, literally trained, to handle life like mini adults. Looking back, it wasn't parenting, it was parentification. We weren't being raised, we were being used. My sister was the quiet one, the peacekeeper. But here's the twist. The more we tried to behave, the more she resented us. There was no winning with her. Love was conditional, praise was rare, and guilt, that was her favorite currency. The emotional toll was slow and sneaky. That dynamic between the three of us, my mom, my sister, and me, set the tone for everything that followed. From the outside, we probably looked like a regular single-parent household, 2 kids. School was our only break, and even that came with dread because we knew what was waiting at home. As soon as we walked through the door, it was game time. Opening the fridge and seeing nothing but expired condiments and a half-empty bottle of soda. My stomach was growling, and I made the mistake of saying I was hungry. And when she wasn't hitting, she was cutting us down with her words. "You're worthless. You'll never amount to anything. You're lucky I even let you live here." That last one really stuck. Imagine being 9 years old and believing you didn't deserve a place to sleep unless you earned it. She turned on me like a switch had been flipped, screaming that I was ungrateful, that I didn't know how hard she worked. I'd triple-check the laundry so she couldn't accuse me of shrinking her clothes. I learned to predict her moods like weather patterns: stormy, silent, explosive. There was never any consistency, except for the underlying truth: everything was our fault. But the road to freedom didn't begin with escape, it began with a single rebellious decision to stop playing her game, and that I should go cry to my dad if I wanted a hot meal. Instead, it became the year I hit my emotional and physical breaking point. I think she figured out early that being invisible was safer. Now, you'd think that would bring a wave of grief, some reflection, maybe even a sense of family unity. But for my mom, it was more like she'd just won the lottery. Thriving, that was a fantasy for other people. We weren't allowed to dream big or feel proud or even rest. We were just there to keep the wheels turning for a woman who saw us not as children, but as tools. I started keeping my clothes and important papers hidden in my room, afraid she'd sell or destroy them in a fit of anger. I wasn't just her daughter anymore. I was her scapegoat, her ATM, and her emotional punching bag. She complained that we ate all the food and drained her finances even, though she wasn't paying for anything. Not my tuition, not groceries, not even the basics like soap or school supplies. Me, I wasn't good at staying quiet. I asked questions. I pushed back. I wasn't mad anymore. I was numb. I had a 1,000-yard stare and a head full of exhaustion. There was no coming back from it. Whatever little respect or belief I had left in my mom was gone. Watching her blow through a fortune while blaming everyone else, including me, for her problems, made one thing very clear. She was never going to grow up. I didn't have the time or energy to fight her. I was already drowning. And no matter how much I gave, she would never be satisfied. She didn't want a daughter, she wanted a lifeline, a source of income, a servant, a therapist. I just kept my head down, focused on surviving one day at a time, and started quietly building an exit strategy. When I bought a cheap cell phone with my own money because I couldn't rely on our disconnected landline, she flipped out. Not because she cared about money, but because I didn't consult her. How dare I spend money on something I wanted when she had bills she refused to pay, that I was worthless, that I was a burden, that everything bad in her life, divorce, bills, stress, was somehow my fault. I didn't realize how wrong that was until much later. At the time, it just felt normal, and that made me the scapegoat. If something broke, it was my fault. If she had a bad day, it was because I gave her an attitude. I was always the reason she was miserable, even if I hadn't done a thing. I went to school that day with an empty stomach and a full dose of shame. And while I didn't know it yet, it set the stage for the ultimate revenge, the moment I stopped protecting her. Lies, and finally cried to my father. No matter how badly she treated us, we still hoped for a good job, or even just a smile, but it never came. If we got straight A's, she shrugged. If we got in trouble, she used it as proof we were doomed. There was no middle ground, no unconditional love. Only conditions, only consequences. Drop your bag, roll up your sleeves, it makes survival feel like a privilege instead of a right. And start cleaning. Dishes, vacuuming, laundry, scrubbing bathrooms, whatever needed doing, we were expected to do it. No asking for help, no complaining. Mom made it very clear. I work all day. What do you do? Never mind that we were kids. Our job, according to her, was to make her life easier, and if we didn't, we were selfish. One overworked mom. That was on us too. I learned to cook out of necessity, not curiosity. If we were hungry, we had to make it ourselves. And if there wasn't anything to make, tough luck. Asking her to go grocery shopping was dangerous, because somehow we were always to blame. Complain to your father, she'd snap like clockwork. He's the reason there's nothing in this house. But inside that house, there was no warmth, and your pain is invalid. I stopped complaining because it never helped. I stopped asking for things because I didn't want the backlash. Eventually, I just stopped expecting kindness altogether. No support, and definitely no childhood. My sister and I weren't just kids. We were housemaids, emotional punching bags, and scapegoats. And the worst part, we didn't even know it was messed up. To us, it was just life. Every day followed the same pattern. Dinner? I remember one morning when I was maybe 9. That's the thing about emotional abuse. It's sneaky. It teaches you early on that your feelings are a burden. Your needs are annoying. The hitting, that was just part of the routine. A slap here, a shove there, never enough to leave bruises that showed, but enough to remind us of our place. I got used to walking on eggshells. I'd wake up early just to clean the living room before she saw it. My sister coped by staying quiet, flying under the radar. And yet, we still tried to win her approval. Isn't that wild? Over time, I began to believe the things she said. That's what abuse does. It normalizes the chaos. It trains you to expect pain and call it love. And in our house, surviving was the only goal. That dysfunction, it ran deep. And it wasn't until I left for college that I started to unlearn it. Senior year was supposed to be about preparing for my future college applications, seat scores, dreaming big. That summer started with a funeral. My grandmother, my mom's mother, passed away. But instead of using it responsibly, my mom treated it like a party fund. Within months, it was gone. She quit her job under the pretense that she needed a break to process everything. Fair. Everyone grieves differently. But while most people grieve quietly, my mom grieved by blowing through tens of thousands of dollars on nights out with her drinking buddy, random shopping sprees, and online chat rooms. Yep, she was obsessed with the early internet. She'd stay up all night talking to strangers in chat rooms and spend her days sleeping in. Bills? Ignored. Groceries? Forgotten. Parenting? Non-existent. So while she was living like a carefree teenager, I was left holding the family together. I picked up extra shifts at my part-time job just to keep food in the fridge. I handled my schoolwork, my chores, and my mom's responsibilities too. Every time a utility got shut off or the fridge was empty, she'd look at me with disgust and say, "You have a job. Why can't you pay it?" There was no gratitude, no shame, just entitlement. I was 17 trying to finish high school, keep my GPA up, and figure out how to pay for college. And on top of that, I was trying to manage a grown adult who had completely checked out. Anytime I brought up the child support my dad sent, she'd deflect. "That's for your sister's tuition," she'd lie. Only years later would I learn that was complete BS. She'd refer to the support checks as "Mommy's paycheck" and wave them around like a trophy. That summer broke me in ways I didn't fully understand at the time. I stopped sleeping well. I was constantly anxious. The tension got worse every time I made a choice for myself. And the gaslighting never stopped. She'd whine to her friends about how hard it was raising 2 kids in college. By the time school started again, I was done emotionally. That summer was the final nail in the coffin of my childhood. And I realized something else. If I didn't change the game, she was going to drag me down with her. But I was done being any of those things. That summer didn't just break me, it woke me up. College was supposed to be my fresh start. After years of walking on eggshells and playing the live-in maid, I thought maybe, just maybe, this was the moment things would turn around. I had worked hard, earned decent grades, landed a spot in a respected state university, and was even accepted into the honors program. With some grants, a little bit of scholarship money, and savings from my part-time job, I made it through my freshman year without asking anyone for help. Like most students, I had them sent to my home address. Seemed simple enough until I didn't receive them. At first, I thought they'd been delayed in the mail. But then my sister, who had been home visiting that weekend, told me the truth. Our mom had shredded them. But I underestimated just how far my mom would go to sabotage me. She agreed, even offered to help us for free. And for what? Just because my mom couldn't stand the idea of me getting by without her? Not if it meant I'd outgrow her. She didn't care about my future, she cared about control. Maybe she pitied us, or maybe she just wanted to make sure we didn't get dragged down by my mother-esque nonsense. Either way, she came through. For years, she claimed she was helping my sister pay tuition with the child support money. All those times she cried poverty, all those guilt trips about how hard it was to be a single mom, it was all smoke and mirrors. She'd confronted our mom before and gotten the same defensive, finger-pointing routine I did. "It's your father's fault. I have other bills. Don't pressure me," classic dodges that never added up. "You should have been more careful. It's not my fault you're irresponsible." Because she made it clear that the moment I did, I'd be punished for it. "You can't expect me to do everything for you." The constant sabotage, the lies, the twisted narrative she spun to everyone else about how she was supporting me while I was the ungrateful child, it was becoming unbearable. I was putting in all the effort. She was putting in none. She didn't realize I was growing up and growing wise to her game. And she definitely didn't see what was coming next. And when I finally cried to my father, everything she had built on lies, manipulation, and child support would come crashing down. But in her version of the story, she was the struggling hero and I was the leech. I had to request replacement forms from my employer again, and this time it took weeks. And yet, anytime I said no to helping her financially, like when I spent my hard-earned money on a basic cell phone plan instead of paying our home phone bill, she would lash out. "You're so selfish," she'd say. "You expect me to do everything for you." I had saved just over $1,000, enough, I thought, to cover my upfront dorm payment. I'd done everything the school asked, filled out my FAFSA, lined up work-study, and budgeted down to the penny. But when I arrived on campus, I was blindsided. The university had changed their policy. Now students had to pay 50% of the semester balance up front before moving in. Mentally, emotionally, physically, I had nothing left in the tank. I was working full-time at a summer job, saving every cent I could to cover the upcoming semester, and doing everything I could to stay afloat. My sister had already clued him in to how little our mom had helped her with college, despite all the child support money. It felt like someone had opened a locked door in my brain. It wasn't just about money, it was about freedom. About finally being seen, being helped, being believed. He gathered tuition statements, financial aid documents, anything that showed the payments were coming from me, not from my mom. I gave him access to my account so he could see the transactions himself. She sneered. "Well, maybe next time you'll plan better." "No, thank you," to him. "No, I'm glad you're okay." Just pure bitterness that her control over me had slipped. He was meticulous, calm, and determined, not just to support me, but to expose the truth legally. She told him how our mom had lied for years about tuition, about expenses, about everything. But seeing it happen to me firsthand, the entire foundation she'd built on manipulation and victimhood collapsed. All the guilt trips, all the power plays, I wasn't selfish for wanting to be free. All the nights I stayed up worrying about money she already had, it all became meaningless. That was the final straw for him. But it felt like I was swimming against a current that never stopped pulling me back, mostly because every time I made progress, my mom found a way to sabotage it. Like she never thought I'd actually do it. I didn't even ask him to. He just did it. No guilt trips, no questions, just action. And then he took me out to lunch. He presented all the evidence, proof that I was living on campus most of the year, that my mom hadn't contributed a cent toward college costs, and that she'd been receiving child support under false pretenses. He argued that it no longer made sense for her to collect anything while offering no support, and that he would be better off paying my tuition directly. I missed the priority FAFSA deadline, and as a result, I didn't qualify for the full financial aid package I'd received the year before. That meant scrambling to cover a bigger tuition gap on my own. But now the truth was out in the open. Our mom wasn't helping us because she didn't want to. She had the means, she just chose herself every single time. She wasn't broke. She was just spending the money on herself. She would either have to take over the payments or sell. That house, the one she used as leverage against us for years, was now a financial ticking clock. I had the forms sent home again, assuming maybe, just maybe, she'd learned her lesson. But nope. She, accidentally, threw them out again, twice. She hadn't worked a real job since my grandmother died years earlier. Any attempt I made to talk to her about budgeting or bills was met with a list of excuses. Her leg hurt, she needed a break, she wasn't feeling well. But her health magically improved when it came to going out drinking with her friends or spending hours chatting online in dial-up chat rooms. Every time I asked why she couldn't help me, she'd say she was still paying for your sister. But when I brought it up to my dad, he looked confused, then angry. He knew the real story. He had co-signed a loan for my sister, one he ended up paying off himself. My mom hadn't contributed a dime. I got my taxes filed just in time and managed to scrape by with enough aid to stay in school. The first sign came during tax season. I was on campus and needed my W-2s south from the previous summer job to file my taxes and complete my FAFSA. Shredded them deliberately. When I confronted her during spring break, She brushed it off like it was no big deal. Claimed she thought they were junk mail. But her tone didn't match her excuse. She wasn't sorry, she was smug. The woman was confused and concerned. She hadn't received anything from my mom. My sister told me right away, and we both knew. Mom was lying again. But this time she had been caught red-handed. Then she spun an even bigger lie, saying her friend, who happened to be a CPA, had them and was going to do my taxes for me. It sounded suspicious, but I wanted to believe her. I wanted so badly to believe that for once she was trying to help. But my sister wasn't buying it. She called the CPA directly and asked if she had our tax forms. We asked the CPA if we could send her replacement W-2 south, but the damage had been done. That entire semester was clouded with stress, panic, and last-minute scrambling. It was the first time I truly realized she didn't want me to succeed. That spring, I also found out another bombshell. My mom had been lying about my sister's college costs too. It was like everything I believed about our financial situation was a lie. My sister confirmed it. Then came my sophomore year. You'd think after the first W-2 debacle I'd be prepared. By the time I realized what happened, it was too late. When I brought this up to my mom, just hoping she'd admit she messed up or offer to help in some way, she turned it into my failure. I wasn't expecting anything. That was the problem. I never expected anything anymore. By the end of that year, my patience was wearing thin. The real irony? Every time she told me to go cry to your father, she said it with venom, but that was her mistake. She thought I was still the kid who didn't question her, who still felt guilty for needing things, because soon I would take her advice. By the summer before my junior year of college, I was running on fumes. That summer was brutal. I stayed home to save on rent, which meant being around my mom again full-time. She didn't buy groceries, didn't pay bills, didn't lift a finger around the house. Everything? She was doing nothing. I remember the moment I hit my breaking point. It was move-in day for the fall semester. I was panicking. Sitting in the admissions office, surrounded by boxes of my stuff, and being told I couldn't move in unless I came up with the money by the next day. I called my mom. Her response? Cold and smug. Guess you should have planned better. You're not a kid anymore. That was it. That was the moment something in me snapped, not out of rage, but clarity. I finally saw her for what she was. Not just neglectful, not just emotionally manipulative, but a person who never intended to help me in the first place. I thanked her, hung up the phone, and called my dad. He didn't hesitate. He told me to hold tight and that he was on his way. The next morning, he showed up bright and early, coffee and a donut in hand like it was any other day. Calm, reassuring, like he had everything under control, and for the first time in forever, so did I. We went office to office across campus. My dad co-signed a student loan and paid the difference out of his own pocket to cover the tuition. That lunch changed everything. He told me he'd suspected for a while that something wasn't right. He looked me in the eye and asked, "How would you feel if, instead of giving your mom child support, I just took over your college costs directly?" I didn't hesitate. I said yes. From that moment on, things shifted. My dad started requesting records. My mom had no idea what was coming. When I called to tell her that my dad had helped me cover my tuition, her reaction wasn't surprise. It was spite. A few weeks later, the real fallout began. My dad filed a petition with the family court to modify the divorce settlement. The court agreed. Not only was child support cut off, but my dad was also released from paying the mortgage on our house. The moment I chose to stop protecting her lies and simply tell the truth, that was my turning point. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't crazy. I was finally free. If the summer before junior year was the beginning of my awakening, then what followed was the long-awaited reckoning. And the best part? I didn't have to scream, fight, or seek vengeance in some loud, dramatic way. I just did exactly what she wasn't mad that she lost money. She was mad that I got what she never had. Instead of being proud, she was bitter. Instead of feeling joy for my future, she felt robbed of something she believed she was owed. A timeline that showed when I moved onto campus and how often I stayed there. The judge reviewed the evidence and asked one critical question. Has the mother contributed anything toward the child's education in the past 2 years? The obligation to pay for the mortgage and taxes on the house? Gone. If my mom wanted to keep the house, she would have to take over the full responsibility herself or sell it. And considering she hadn't held a job in over 3 years, that wasn't going to be easy. My sister's records showed her tuition was paid through a combination of scholarships and loans, co-signed by my dad, loans he had already paid off. His voice was calm, but there was a smile behind every word. "It's done," he said. "You're covered for school, and she's going to have to figure things out on her own now." And my dad? He even offered me a job at his office for the break. That I was just like your father, and I didn't even flinch. I just smiled and said every empty fridge, every unpaid bill, every broken promise, she blamed him. And now, the very man she used as a punching bag had become my safety net, my advocate, my protector. Well, you always told me to go to him when I had a problem, so I did. My bank statements showed every dollar spent on books, food, housing, and supplies came from me or my dad. Mom. My dad had made it clear to the court. He wasn't going to keep footing the bill for a woman who offered nothing in return. I let my dad see what was really going on. And in the end, the system did the rest. The story she told everyone about being the struggling, selfless, single mom shattered. Because the truth was out, she had been living off my sister and me, milking the support meant for our future to fund her lazy, selfish lifestyle. The child support had served its purpose, and now it was over. Had been telling like I'd been holding my breath for years, and finally, I could breathe. Me to do for. She stopped paying utility bills on the house, trying to make it seem like she was destitute, hoping to play the victim card in front of the judge again. She even called me, claiming the electricity and water had been shut off. "If you want to come home for winter break," she said, "you're going to need to help out around here. I can't do everything myself. Years, go cry to your father. Only this time." He listened and acted. After my dad paid off my tuition and co-signed the loan, he started gathering documents and building a case. My financial aid records, tuition statements, bank account activity. His argument, I reminded her that for years, she told me to go complain to my father, and now I had. "You're right," I said. "I should have gone to him sooner." Was simple but damning. He was still paying my mom roughly $2,000 a month in child support, plus covering the mortgage and property taxes on the house. Yet, I wasn't living there, and my mom wasn't supporting me financially in any way. Not only that, but she had lied repeatedly about using that money to fund my education. It wasn't hearsay. He had the proof. Even the FAFSA applications that showed I had filed as an independent student, without a dime from my mom. I gave him full access to everything because I had nothing to hide. She hadn't bought me a notebook since middle school. The truth was simple. She hadn't contributed anything. Not one penny, and he was ready to take that truth to court. My dad filed a petition to reopen parts of the divorce settlement. When my mom found out about the court hearing, she exploded. Not just at my dad, but at me. She called me, voice shaking with rage, asking how I could betray her like this. "I gave you everything," she screamed. "And this is how you repay me, everything." I stayed calm. Her response? Accusations, guilt trips. She told me I was selfish, that I had no idea how hard her life was, and that I was just like my father, cold, manipulative, ungrateful. Then came the classic line. "I never got to have 4 carefree years of college. You don't know how lucky you are." And that's when it really hit me. Meanwhile, my dad's case was airtight. In court, he laid it all out with quiet precision. Financial records. School documentation. My mom tried to bluff. She covered tuition for my sister, that she bought us things. But the paper trail told a different story. She was caught. The judge ruled in my dad's favor. Effective immediately, child support payments were terminated. I remember getting the call from my dad after the hearing. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just exhaled. And my mom? She unraveled. She started telling everyone how heartless we were. How her own children had turned on her. How we'd taken everything from her. I reminded her she didn't have to. I wasn't living there anymore, and I wasn't coming back. I told her I'd be spending winter break at my dad's house, with my stepmom and half-siblings, who were excited to have me. She was furious, screamed that I was selfish, that I didn't care about her, The irony was perfect. For years she had used my dad as a scapegoat. Her house was eventually listed for sale. That wasn't just financial revenge, it was symbolic. She didn't just lose a check, she lost the illusion. And the best part? I didn't have to yell, argue, or seek revenge in some dramatic fashion. All I did was tell the truth. I stopped protecting her lies. So yes, I got my revenge, not by being cruel. Not by fighting dirty. But by following her advice, one last time. Go cry to your father. After the court ruling, it was like a switch flipped in my mother, but not the one that flips on responsibility or maturity. No, this was the guilt trip switch, and she flipped it into overdrive. She started playing the victim to anyone who would listen. According to her, I had abandoned her. I was ungrateful, brainwashed by my father, and turned against my own mother for money. She conveniently left out the part where she hadn't contributed a single dime to my college education, hadn't worked in years, and had been living comfortably on child support and a mortgage-free roof for over a decade. She tried to manipulate me with the old tricks, shame, pity, and passive aggression. My dad, stepmom, and younger siblings welcomed me with open arms. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe. I felt supported. I felt wanted. There was warmth in the house, both literal and emotional. We decorated the tree together, supporting each other as we both pulled away from the toxicity. My mom couldn't play us against each other anymore, and she hated that. We had dinner around a table where no one yelled, where everyone laughed and asked about each other's day. Turns out, the threat of a court order and the reality of losing the house was a better motivator than motherhood ever was. And I was choosing people who didn't hurt me, who didn't gaslight me, who didn't treat my success as a personal attack. She moved her boyfriend into the house temporarily to help with expenses while they waited for the sale to go through. Then, without telling anyone, she relocated to another time zone. It was so normal, it almost felt surreal. Right before winter break, she called me sobbing, saying the water and electric had been shut off. Not even on my birthday, which she ended up forgetting a few years later after making a big deal about how she brought me into this world. Perfectly healthy, perfectly capable. But she still expected me, her daughter, to become her caretaker. Not because I owed her, but because in her mind she was the victim. She still complained, and I was still the solution. Mom, we've built lives we re-proud of, ones that don't revolve around dysfunction or pity. And now, when she tries to pull us back in with her sob stories, we smile, roll our eyes, and remind each other, we made it out. I said, I'm not your retirement plan. She didn't like that. She told my sister I was cold and ungrateful and just like your father. My sister and I laughed about it later. We'd heard the same lines since we were kids. I calmly told her I'd be spending Christmas at my dad's and that I hoped things improve soon. My sister and I had both reached a point where her words didn't carry weight anymore. We stopped expecting her to change. When she calls, it saved us. We keep conversations light and short. We don't share personal milestones, and we definitely don't ask for advice. If she spirals into a guilt trip, one of us changes the subject or suddenly has bad reception. She hadn't been abandoned, she had driven everyone away. And now she was just sitting in the consequences of her own choices. She sent a birthday card or leave a voicemail. Something like, I miss my daughters, I just want to feel like a mom again. It's always sad, but never surprising. Because the truth is, she never wanted to be a mom. She wanted someone to take care of her. And we don't argue with her lies anymore, we just nod and let her ramble. Stop trying to make her happy. We started treating her like that distant. She wore out her welcome with most of the family. She stayed with different relatives for short stints, but her refusal to work or contribute always caught up with her. After one too many woe is me stints and unpaid bills, she ended up bouncing around shelters. Eventually, she landed in subsidized housing, a small loft-style apartment. Decent, honestly clean, safe, eccentric relative who meant well but was stuck in her own little fantasy world. Only difference was she wasn't harmless, so we set boundaries. Maybe she'd get a job, take responsibility, start over. But that would have required growth, was never her strong suit. She called my sister and told her I had abandoned the family. She spun stories about me turning into a snob who thought I was too good for her, but my sister knew the truth. She'd seen the same patterns. She'd endured the same treatment. Her tone shifted instantly. She went from sobbing to screaming in under a minute. She called me selfish, cruel, heartless. At first it was subtle. She'd call and ask how I was doing, then slowly pivot to her struggles. I can't afford groceries. No one wants to help me. You know, she said once, when I was your age, I didn't have anyone to take care of me. I just thought maybe I could live with you for a bit, just until I get back on my feet. It must be nice to be young and have everything handed to you. I raised you, and this is how you repay me. She spat. If you want to come home for the holidays, she sniffled, you'll need to help me out. I have nothing. Your father cut me off. I don't even have heat. It would have worked a year earlier. But now, I saw through it. I didn't engage. I didn't explain. I didn't argue. I just stopped playing her game. That winter break was the first time I felt what peace actually looked like. My dad even got me a job in his office, helping with clerical work and learning real-world skills. Meanwhile, back at my mom's, she was still putting on the performance of a lifetime. We started comparing notes more often, laughing at how absurd the guilt trips were. Eventually, she got the utilities turned back on. Just disappeared. And you know what? I didn't miss her.
Not at Christmas.
Not at Easter. What I did feel was relief. For the first time, I was choosing who I wanted in my life. The guilt faded. The fear disappeared. And in its place, a new life began to grow, one rooted in boundaries, truth, and finally, freedom. You'd think after losing her child support, her free ride, and the house, my mom might have had a wake-up call. Instead, she doubled down on the one skill she had mastered, playing the victim. Even after college, when I was working full-time and building my own life, she still found ways to circle back into chaos. Everything handed to me, that part always got me. She even tried to rope me back in with guilt. She wasn't even 50. I shut that down immediately. The thing is now that distance. Eventually, and yet she told people she was abandoned. That no one wanted to take care of her. That life had been unfair. But we knew better. Every once in a while, and we're not doing that anymore. We don't hate her. We don't wish her harm. But we're done being her emotional crutches. She thought I'd always be her emotional punching bag. She never expected me to walk away and take her income with me. All I had to do was tell the truth and let the system handle it. I lost a mother in the process, but I found my strength, my future, and a real family with my dad and stepmom. If you've ever been told you were selfish for standing up for yourself, remember this. Peace is priceless. In the end, I didn't need to scream or fight to get my revenge. Like, subscribe and share if you know someone who needs to hear this.